Welcome to Silver and Gold, your movies and television monastery. I'm your host, Alistair, and I'm here because I care about movies. And speaking of movies, we're going to talk about a film that I got to see very recently called Beau is Afraid. Oh, it's been in my head ever since. This movie is insane. This film, I have been waiting to talk to you guys about it. I'm so excited to discuss it today. There's nothing else really to talk about. It's all that's been on my mind ever since I've seen it. I've been trying to avoid talking to friends about it. I've been trying to avoid discussing it without ruining it for everybody. And I've also just been not trying to force my opinion on everyone. I want people to have the best experience they can in the theater and have the most unbiased experience they can, although we all suffer from bias. We all have it. Every review you've ever heard has bias, but I try to keep people from being steeped in bias or changing their expectations for a film. My expectations for this film were insane because everyone was telling me that it was going to insult me in the end. It was a big middle finger to the audience. It was going to make my brain melt. It was going to destroy everything that I thought I knew about cinema. And I have to say, I found it oddly comforting. I love the film. If you didn't guess, I love the film. That's the spoiler of the day, is that I love Beau is Afraid. I've wanted to watch this movie again from the second that it ended. And really, that's all I want to do all day is watch this movie. That's not going to happen, though, because it doesn't come back to my area for about another week or so. But when it does, I probably will watch it again. This will not be the only episode on Beau is Afraid. This is a general episode. I did a lot of thinking. I did a lot of digging in my brain about why this movie struck such a huge chord with me. And now I'm going to share that with everyone. So good luck. You clicked on it. I told you that I am unhinged about movies. So if you can't handle it, And with that being said also, let's make sure that we've seen the movie before we listen to my review, please. Unless it's a movie that you just know you're not interested in seeing whatsoever because it's not your thing, but you just kind of want to know what happens, that's fine. But if you're interested in the movie, don't listen to this because although I don't really do any heavy spoilers, I would hope that you just go watch the movie and then you kind of get my opinion on the film. That's what I'm hoping for you. I'm rooting for you that that you go see the movie and then come back. So you can just click off of this right now, go see the movie, because I really don't think I'm going to do any huge spoilers, but in case I do, even the minor spoilers could ruin the experience for you. So that was my segue into talking about the film, but also my way of just warning you, be forewarned that this is spoiler territory, even if it's just minor spoilers. So we're going to talk about Beau is Afraid. So Ari Aster is back and better than ever with Beau is Afraid. It's his latest offering with the studio A24. And I had the pleasure of driving 40 minutes for a whole double feature of Evil Dead Rise and then a 9 p.m. showing of Beau is Afraid. Yes, so if the movie didn't really start until 9:30, that means I didn't get out of the theater until 12:30 at night. And it was worth it. I really don't care. I had the pleasure of seeing these films back to back. You heard my review of Evil Dead Rise yesterday. And to be honest, if I'm being transparent with you guys, I really enjoyed the film, but I don't know, that review is really, for me personally, was kind of lacking something. I felt like I was missing something. And so I wanted to make sure that, especially for a film like this that I want to champion like Beau is Afraid, I wanted to make sure that I had a lot to talk about. So I don't know if this episode is going to be longer. I'm assuming it will be, but what it certainly will be is packed with more information and more fleshed out. It's going to be a more detailed view of my opinions on this film. So that's what you're listening to today. I just wanted to also say that I had to get into a proper headspace to watch this movie because everyone's after, especially the coolest thing is that anticipation episode that I recorded before the one that came up, episode 102, I believe, just talking about like what I was thinking and what I was looking for going into Evil Dead Rise and Beau is Afraid, going into the double feature. I got to instill in my mind, okay, I'm watching this film because I want to enjoy it. I want, or not necessarily enjoy it. That's the wrong way. I'm looking for the feeling that I'm glad I saw it. Not necessarily that I enjoyed it, not necessarily that I loved it. I just want to know whether or not I'm glad I saw it. And it just so happened that I really enjoyed the film as well. So I'm ecstatic about that. I'm glad that I had those expectations set up going into the film. This is going to be a spoiler-filled episode, like I said, but I'm just repeating myself now. So let's get into what, Beau is Afraid means to me, to us, and where A24 and Ari Aster and everyone was like coming from on this project. So this was a huge swing from Ari Aster and A24. Beau is Afraid delivers a type of gut-punching odyssey that Aster he promised, and it certainly fulfills his quote that it's Lord of the Rings, but you're going to your mom's house. That was kind of the comparison he touted the film as, and I agree with that sentiment. It was the Lord of the Rings of going to your mom's house. $50 million US. It's the most expensive film that A24 has produced. And they're coming off of huge Oscar success with Everything Everywhere All at Once. And this film just reassures A24 fans that they'll continue to champion the strange and dangerous, the really weird movies, the films that aren't necessarily looking for Oscar approval. And I don't think that's what Everything Everywhere All at Once was looking for either. I think what they were looking for was to make a truly and wholly original vision. That's what they did. So they succeeded, in my opinion, and then everything else was just a cherry on top, and that's the kind of studio that A24 is. So that was really exciting going into this film, just knowing that A24 had put its full stock in it, not really caring whether or not they were going to get that big return that people associate with a movie with this budget. Because let's face it, it's a very challenging watch, especially for the average moviegoer. And that's not to say that the average moviegoer is lacking intelligence or that they're lesser, or that it just means that we don't go into theaters, to the average theater, expecting to see a movie like Beau is Afraid. Even the trailer didn't really sell it for what it was, because it's truly experimental. It's one of the most experimental films I've ever seen. It's starring Joaquin Phoenix, Patti LuPone, Nathan Lane, Amy Ryan, Kylie Rogers, Parker Posey, and Denise Miniche, I think is how to say it. I kind of practiced that before, probably flubbed it, but these are kind of the people that I'm going to spotlight when talking about this film. There were obviously many other people in the cast, and everyone did a great job. I don't think there was one actor on screen where I felt like, okay, why are they here? Or, this is a mismatch. Everyone really felt like they belonged in this universe of Beau is Afraid. And so I can't say better things about the cast. Beau is Afraid is about Beau Wasserman. He's a mild-mannered but paranoia-ridden man who embarks on a surreal odyssey to get home to his mother. That's the most common synopsis I've seen when looking up, how to describe this movie. I actually really fascinated with synopsis and plot and log lines, things like that. I really pay attention to the way that they want to present their film to an audience, because really you usually only get one first impression when someone asks you what is this movie about? So I really I think that's that's a decent synopsis, although it is just so much more challenging and interesting than the synopsis would imply. Um, I'm really happy that this film was made, though, and I would be glad that I saw it, even if I didn't like it. That's what is fulfilling to me. I'm like, okay, yes, I love the film, and I'm glad I did, but the most important thing, more than me loving it, more than me enjoying it, is that whether I go in and like it, whether I go in and dislike a film, is if I feel like my time was wasted. And I certainly don't feel like that at all. In fact, I would happily and gladly waste my time with this film many, many more times over. It joins the likes of Synecdoche, New York, Mother, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, those sort of films. And it's steeped in this kind of existential modernity and like philosophy, like this weird ritualistic philosophy that often drives people out of the theater. That's that's really my view on these sorts of films. As much as I enjoy them, I know that that's an energy that often happens when crowds and audiences interact with a film like this. It's usually the sort of film that would be on streaming. A studio would, make this film, realize, hey, this is a really challenging watch, and then say, you know what, I want to make money off of this. So although it would be cool to have it in cinemas, I'm just going to sell it to a streaming service who right now they just print money. Streaming services are just looking to buy content. So it makes a lot of sense to sell those sorts of movies to streaming services. But A24 did not do that. A24 put the film in theaters. They put it on IMAX screens. It's insane. It's the best thing. I'm really happy that this film got a wide release. I'm so glad that there is like some kid in high school or some, I don't know, hopefully not an elementary student or anything, but hey, maybe somebody took their kid to see this movie because they wanted to see it. All more power to them, and I'm glad that they are somewhere being inspired by this film, and it's going to change their life. I'm glad that happens with many movies, but specifically this one, I feel like if you're very young and very inspired by this movie, then you're probably more similar to me, so I don't know. That excites me that there's probably some kid watching this movie and loving it. And it's because it got a wide theatrical release. It's because of that. Yes, it would, more people would maybe see it if it was on a streaming service, but that's not the ideal experience that the people making it had in mind when watching it. With that being said, I will be watching it on anything, on streaming, on physical media, and of course, more times in theaters, hopefully. The contents of this film have pretty much been promoting it on its own. It's a self-promoter, just the insane theater reactions that people have had, the things that I have read on Twitter about people being absolutely irate about this film, to the point where even telling other people that they should not be happy about it and should not enjoy it, like really crazy reactions. Also, you had critics calling it a career killer of Ari Aster, which is hilarious to me because he already has another film slated. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see if the next film is successful, then they'll have to eat their words. But it was just really funny that that these critics were really peeved about this film, and just people in general. It's a movie. As much as I understand that when a movie is good, it can feel life-changing and inspiring, and when a movie is bad, or is a bad experience, because again, I don't like using a word bad to refer to movies. If it's not a good experience for you, I understand where that could be frustrating, but I also just don't think it's that deep. Like as deep as you want to feel that, cinema and our passion for it can be extremely strong. I just find it really crazy, all these polarizing reactions that the film has gotten, but that pretty much promoted it for itself. Also, you had Joaquin Phoenix advising moviegoers not to watch it under the influence of drugs, which just added to the spectacle, really. It was actually pretty funny. So now I want to talk about where this film ranks in Ari Aster's filmography. Like where it ranks, what it means, how do I see this film in the context of Ari Aster's filmography? And I would say that this is Ari Aster's boldest film. I would liken it to his betrothal to cinema itself. He wants to challenge the medium, share it with the world, become one with it, and drive off into the sunset, leaving us wondering what will come next for the lovely couple. It's everything, everywhere all at once. It's a lot. And that's a big reason I appreciate the film. That's something that I'm looking for in films, honestly, if we're being real here. That's some of the things I'm looking for in a film, is how much is this like an extension of its creators. And that's exactly what Beau is Afraid is. It is an extension of Ari Aster's psyche, and I'm just so glad that he invited us in. For some people it was living hell, but for me it was awesome. And I'm trying to avoid recency bias as best I can. So now the question comes, where does this rank in Ari Aster's filmography? For me, this is my opinion. I'm probably going to... This is his magnum opus. I told you not to click it. If you didn't like it. I told you that if you thought I was going to say something insane, I'm already insane. So back off, honestly. I do not care. It is his magnum opus. I love this film. Hereditary is certainly his most pleasing and mainstream effort, and it has risen to prominence over the years as a horror classic since its release, but Beau is Afraid, at least to me, offers everything that Hereditary does. You got an awful mother's death looming over the main protagonist's life. We've got familial turmoil. We've got judgment from society, conspiracy, even decapitation is in both films. But it offers so much more than Hereditary could, because Hereditary is like trapped in these really awesome tropes that are associated with elevated horror. But Beau is Afraid is darkly comedic. It's deeply surreal, and the scope is just so epic. I mean, there are so many scenes where I just feel like I'm just being swallowed up by the screen. And that is why, to me, it's just his best film so far. I can't wait to see what he does next, but to me, this is his best film. And now that we're on my true opinion of the film, we might as well just start talking about why I love it so much. And a big part of this is Ari Aster. I mean, he is like the writer-director. He is the auteur that is like steering this ship and taking us on this incredible odyssey. And it's really his direction. I really enjoy his direction. It's steadfast. It's relentless. At times overwhelming, but really overall caring. That's the thing about Ari Aster's direction and his writing. His writing for this movie is, of course, gonna seem pretty abstract. I would really like to see what the screenplay looks like for this film, because the writing isn't necessarily something that, like, of all the things I would pick up on that I care about the most, but the storytelling and the direction are really strong, and the screenplay is a key part of that. So I'm not, definitely not overlooking the screenplay, but I really want to focus on Ari Aster's direction, because he, in my opinion, takes this really dark and tedious subject matter and just gives you a warm hug with it. And then you both chuckle a lot. You both laugh. And I find the film weirdly comforting, because within the first 5 minutes of the film, you're in for a chaotic ride. When that baby's ass gets slapped and Beau is Afraid, is on screen, you know you're in for a ride. But you also kind of know, just within the first 5 minutes, when you start to see how loopy and insane this world is, it's also apparent that you're with a director who's competent in expressing his vision. And you realize that any trauma that you may encounter on this journey has a larger purpose, and it's going to make sense in the end. And that's really how I felt about it. I was like, okay, this is strange and chaotic and terrifying, but also I know that there is something bigger happening here. I know he's taking me somewhere. I trust him, not only because I've seen his other films, but also because you just get a sense of it with the direction, with the way that everything is so carefully crafted, and also the way that the actors trust him with these performances that could be insane. These performances, I mean, talk about career killer. If you do this with the wrong director and you act this film out, and it looks bad, it really could be a watershed moment in like your downfall as an actor. That's terrifying. But Ari Aster like guides these performances into something that is just incredible. It's a vision. It is just beautiful. And you know, he's really competent in expressing his vision. That's what I noticed about Ari Aster. He's extremely competent, and it was always clear before in the production design and the choices and, you know, the way that the films were shot before, in the writing, in the performance. This has always been true, but it feels more true than ever in Beau is Afraid. And, you know, something that I really want to talk about, too, is, you know, how I've seen a common criticism of this film being that it's sloppy. And we're going to get more into, like, the plot of the film and what it means, but it had to be. It had to be. I don't think that a film like this, which is, you know, I believe our jobs as filmmakers, if you're a filmmaker, is to, in watching a film, I wanted to capture the human experience. I wanted to capture, you know, humanity and what we are. And you cannot do that without being sloppy. I find that insane, you know, that people will be like, this is just kind of sloppy, though. I'm going to hold that against the film. I don't know why you would. It doesn't make much sense to me. So I will say that. It's just another note about, you know, how this film is not one thing in particular. It really is pushing the boundaries of what a film is supposed to be and what it's supposed to mean to us and what we're supposed to experience when we enter a theater. You know, that's what Beau is Afraid is. And the performances, now that we're talking about Ari Aster's guidance, the performances are pitch perfect. No one phones it in. Everyone is amazing. Every actor. I didn't mention everyone, the entire cast's name and the name of everyone in the cast. There will be more time to talk about that on a later date. I really, at some point, want to break down this film and just like talk about it beat for beat. But in the meantime, I would just say that everyone who stepped on that set did an amazing, like a terrific job. Joaquin Phoenix is the heart of the story as Beau. He really is the light and warmth in this desolate dystopia that Ari Aster has created. But he's also, you know, deeply problematic because he truly embodies what victimization looks like when you take it too far. You know, at the end of the film, he accepts his fate. Because in my opinion, he knows that his life could have been different if he had defended it. It would have ended the same way either way. We all feel the judgment of our decisions and then we die. But it would be a completely different journey if he had defended his life instead of only fretting through it, you know? And that's what I like about Joaquin Phoenix's performance. You do want to scream at Beau and say, take control of this situation, to the point where, okay, now this is a massive spoiler, and I told you before, when he grips his mother's neck, I was rooting for him. Sad as it may be, I was so rooting for him to take control of his life. Now, maybe let's not take control of our lives through violence of other people. Maybe we just get away from them when they're awful and toxic. Maybe that's what we do. But it was the first decision I had seen him made that was truly like in his own self-interest of just shut up. Like, please just shut up. Just stop. Stop being this looming and dark figure in my life and suffocating me. It just made a lot of sense. And while we're talking about, him him choking out his mother, Patti LuPone is firing on all cylinders as a story central villain. She is as menacing as she is confusing, and she's playing this wicked and delicious role that I'm just so glad that she got. Her theater background really shows here in the depth and theatricality of this performance. Even though, she has a chokehold, Mona Wasserman, she has a chokehold on Beau's world, but there's so much that she's not telling us. That's the way I felt in that final scene when she finally gets to speak with Beau and just lets him have it, is that despite the fact that she's truly awful in many different ways and nearly irredeemable in my eyes, of course, although that, moral judgment, I don't want to go there, but yeah, we don't want to. So anyway, I don't like moralizing on characters or people. People are so complex, and that's exactly what Mona is. She's extremely complex, and she always left me wanting to know more of what was going on in her head. That's what I loved about Patti LuPone's performance. It was really like it cemented everything that Zoe Lister-Jones had established in the earlier scenes as young Mona and her interactions with Beau. Nathan Lane, Amy Ryan, Kylie Rogers, Denis Menochet, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, but they chew the scenery as a family in distress. With some of the same problems that Beau has with Mona, it's just like reflected through, I want to say, like a funhouse mirror. It's just really, it's different. It's manifesting in different ways. I feel there's a sense of Beau when he's with them that I've seen this film before. Like, I think he to the point where he even tries to reason with Kylie Rogers, and because in a way he understands her character, but doesn't matter. That doesn't matter because these problems can only, in this universe, in Beau's universe, they can only just cause destruction. They can only result in trauma and in disaster. So, but Nathan Lane, Amy Ryan, Kylie Rogers, the whole family, everyone in that section of the film, in that act of the film, just choose the scenery. There's not a moment where they're not delivering the line in the craziest and most like convincing way. Like, some of the craziest lines are so convincing. Nathan Lane is hilarious, and he gives like a really really grounded but scary approach to his character. Amy Ryan just seems so sweet until, like any other mother figure in this film, she lashes out. Until any other mother figure in the film, she punishes Beau. And she punishes Emil. And I think it's really interesting the way that the film approaches interpersonal relationships, specifically those where gender is different. Where the gender of the two people interacting is different. And speaking of gender, the opposite sex, Parker Posey was the reason my seal of approval got stamped on this film. Her performance was, and I can't forget her character's. I can't remember her character's name. But also the young version of her was really great as well. Was really great. But I'll say with Parker Posey, the reason why she solidified this movie, her scene with Joaquin Phoenix is probably my favorite scene in any movie I've ever watched, ever. Like, ever. And I've said ever like 5 times now. It was chaotic, morally questionable. It was hilarious. And the punchline of that scene when you see it is just so satisfying. It was so satisfying to me to see her Her contorted face is like the image that I associate with this film the most. Like when I think of Beau is Afraid, I just think of the stiff body of Parker Posey. And she really swings for the fences, and it pays off because, like I said, when I saw that scene and that punchline hit, it just made me love the film. I was like, okay, I love this. This movie. Anything that happens after this, we're so far into the film, and this was so like not only iconic but just well done. And I eventually want to do a breakdown of just the scene, just to upload for the podcast. Just that specific scene should be studied because it balances so many things at once. The performances are amazing. It's scary, it's sensual, it's hilarious. So there's just a lot going on with that scene, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and I'm so glad that Parker Posey was a part of this production. Zoe Lister-Jones is probably the last person I'm going to mention, as well as Armin Nehapetian. I'm sure I messed up his name, but young Beau. And Zoe Lister-Jones plays young Mona. And their scenes together are terrifying. Their scenes together really are to me, they're the horrifying element. And not necessarily like in jump scares or in like, oh, this is supposed to be like, this is the horror. Like it's more of like, it's horrifying. It's horror in that way. I felt like her relationship with young Beau was really inappropriate. It was really inappropriate and really scary. And for that reason, I wish that Ari Aster had leaned more into it. Not necessarily showing us anything really dark, but even if it stayed on that level, I just wanted more of it. And not necessarily longer scenes either, just more scenes. If the film had been about 15 minutes longer and had more scenes, I would be okay with that. With more scenes between Zoe Lister-Jones and young Beau. Between young Mona and young Beau, if they had more scenes, I would be very, very happy. Now I just want to reflect on what Beau is Afraid means to me, though. Because for me, it's biographical. The film is biographical. In my 20s, and at this point in my life, I want to say this film reflects what adulthood has been like for me in forging my own path. That's why I love it so much. It's torturous and confusing, and like Beau, I have died. This sounds so dramatic, but it's so true. I have died many times in trying to establish a new psyche to try to become a newer, better version of myself that really takes control of my own life and my own destiny. And that is what Beau is doing. I have a theory that he's not dead. He doesn't die at the end. This version of Beau is dead. He has lost everything at the hands of his mother. The only thing he could possibly do is die and become somebody new. That's what I think happened. That's really my opinion. It's just like my opinion, like that's how I feel. And that's why the film touches like this part of me that I want more films to touch. And I feel like a lot of the times you can only do that by writing and creating something original, And so it's so nice when you go and sit down in a theater and you really can sit and meditate on this sort of grief, anxiety, pain, and torture, and feel like you came out a different, like a better person because it's okay. And I've already done a lot of this shadow work on my own, but the movie really punches, it really hits home that it's okay. In my opinion, that's how I felt about this movie. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people who come out and they're like, this felt like it was just torturous for no reason. There's nothing good that comes out of this. I'm sure that some people will feel that way. I, however, do not. I think that it's comforting. I think that the film is positive because we know what Beau went through. We know what a good person Beau was. We understand Beau's place in this world and how he wanted to help other people. He wanted to be there for other people, but he was living a life that made that very hard. He made that very hard. Also, I forgot about the therapist. It just came into my head. It just came into my head. The therapist. Oh gosh, I can't think of the actor's name. I feel so bad, but he's like in everything. He's in everything ever, and and we'll talk about it more when I do a deeper dive into this film. I will literally talk about every cast member, but really the reason I'm connecting and thinking about the therapist when thinking about, creating this new psyche is that even he was kind of like, instead of helping Beau, judging him instead of guiding him, not necessarily making decisions for his life. Everyone was judging him for his decisions. And that happens to many of us. And I truly believe that when Beau flipped over in that boat, he became somebody new. And it doesn't mean that he didn't look the same. I feel like this movie is not as abstract as some of the naysayers would think it is. But I also feel like the movie is also just not as literal as, well, I would say this. It's not as literal as some of the naysayers think, but it's also not as abstract as some of its biggest supporters and biggest defenders think it is. I feel like people really want to get into the Easter eggs of it all, but that's not really what I care about. What I care about is what the film meant, which is Mona Wasserman and the many ways her overbearing, presence manifests itself in Beau. It manifests itself in Beau's world. I'm interested in the fact that Ari Aster, Joaquin Phoenix, Pavel Pogorzelski, if I could pronounce it, I had his name with me, trying to pronounce it, and yet again probably failing. And this entire cast and crew, they were able to crystallize a part of the human experience that's often left untouched, and it's really never been taken this far in its execution. As far as I've seen in film. And it's discussing the familial hatred, which is rooted in the enslavement that we feel in regards to how our society values family and judges us based on how we navigate familial relationships. That this movie does that for me, and I've never seen a movie that does that. I'm over the moon for this film. I could watch the movie all day, and I'll probably see it again soon. I'm just glad that movies like this exist. And I think with that being said, I have covered like everything that I could think off the top of my head about this film. I don't know if there's much more that I could talk about as far as how great the film is. On a general level, everything else that I say will probably be steeped in analysis. And again, even once I analyze this film, I'm not going to focus that much on the Easter eggs. There are plenty of videos on YouTube and podcasts that will do that. That's not what I'm interested in as much as what the film is doing to me, what the film does to me when I watch it, how it challenges me. And for me, Easter eggs are not challenging. They're just more things to analyze. They're just more information analyze, as much as not as much something that really truly affects us deeply and really makes us think. Although I will say a great Easter egg is "You'll always be my baby." I didn't realize. I was just thinking this is really great to have a pop jam during this gonzo, crazy, absurdist sex scene. But turns out it's literally the message of the film, the theme of the film. "You'll always be my baby." That mind blew me. That was a mind blowing experience. When I finally realized that on the 50th time listening to it, driving back home, I was like, "Oh, you'll always be my baby. I get it. But anyway, I'm psychotic, so I'm going to see you guys later. I'm really glad that you stayed and listened to me rant about Beau is Afraid. And I want you to let me know what you thought of it. Was it crazy? Was it scary? Was it comforting to you? I would really like to meet other people who felt comforted by this film and who want to watch it all the time. But also, if you didn't like it and you have a specific take on it, or you disagree with my take, I'm really open to listening to it. Make sure that you comment underneath the posts. I have an Instagram. This is all linked in my episode notes. I have an Instagram. I have a Twitter. Reach out to me. Talk to me. Tell me what you thought about this. I'm open to having conversations about this film, because these are the sorts of films that I think need to be talked about more. And until then, have a perfectly safe week, and I'll see you guys on the flip.